Are you able to see my screen? Give me a thumbs up, somebody, if you would, please. Okay. So look, we'll go through this pretty quickly. Most of this, I think, hopefully was fairly self-explanatory, but the first thing to note, of course, is that the deadline for submissions for these ideas is at the end of this month, November 30th, no later than 11:59 p.m. On that day. So you'll note, of course, just as in years past, that submissions need to be consistent with accomplishing the goals of one or more of the action plans that are set up as part of the BitNet program through the Comprehensive Conservation Management Plan. And of course, there's a link there for you. If you're not familiar with that, certainly encourage you to take a look at that and become familiar with it. We're talking about really two pots, if you will, of funding here. There's Section 320 of the Clean Water Act work plan projects, and then the IJA, or the Investing in Infrastructure and Jobs Act work plan. So we'll be putting together two work plans. You'll note that they're typically are generally different size awards. So from 20,000 to 900, or excuse me, to 999,000 for the 320 work plan projects, and 100,000 to 300,000. Just to give you an idea of what kind of a typical universe of funds availability might be for us, it's generally on the order of anywhere from $200,000 to about $400,000 or $500,000 annually. That's those pots combined, and so that depends very heavily on our budget in any given year, the amount of funds, of course, that we receive both from the state and from EPA, and so all of this is contingent upon those funds availability, of course. There are some different timelines you'll note with each of those projects, so that's something to be cognizant of. 2 years for the 320 projects and 4 years for the IJA projects. This year, one of the things we asked our action plan teams was to help us focus the call for project ideas. And so you'll note that those are listed here. I'm not going to read through all of these. They're there. If you have questions about them, certainly we're here to answer those questions. But if you look at water quality there, invasive species, biological resources, and the community engagement and education, you'll note that there's some priority areas that those action plan teams felt like were either gaps in knowledge or areas that needed to be worked on within the estuary. I would like to point out that those priority areas were not meant in any way to preclude any proposals. They're just meant to try to focus our efforts. And so do not fret if you are interested in a project or proposing a project that perhaps is outside of one of those focus areas. That again was not meant to preclude any projects that are focused on other things. So I will just talk a little bit about the process then. So we obviously are in the middle of the solicitation, which, as I said before, but doesn't hurt to say it again, we'll close at the end of this month on November 30th. The projects that are proposed will go to the action plan teams for evaluation. That will take place in about beginning or middle of January, probably the 5th through the 16th or so is kind of what we have penciled in right now. We as a staff here at BitNet will then take those recommendations from the action plan teams and evaluate them ourselves, vet those, look at how the project or proposal budgets fit into our overall pool of available funds. That'll happen in the February timeframe. And then we'll present a draft work plan, or 2 draft work plans, I should say, to our management conference at our May 14th meeting. That meeting will be on Nichols campus and likely in the ballroom where it typically is. So we've already got that planned out. And then ultimately, if the management conference approves the work plans as they have been drafted, that'll be sent to the Environmental Protection Agency for their review and evaluation, and hopefully for their award of funds to support those work plans and the projects that are in them. And that typically happens around the first of the federal fiscal year, or October 1st. So we'll move on to the submission form instructions. If you guys have taken a look at this already, you'll note that we did develop a fillable form this year to try to hopefully streamline and make it a little bit easier to submit applications. In some cases, it may be a little bit harder because we did put some word limits and things on those, but hopefully that you all found that to be helpful this year. But again, I'll not read through all of this. Most of this is fairly self-explanatory: name of organization, partners, project period, point of contact, project goals and objectives, background and description, of course, outcomes and deliverables. And then these first three things on this second page of the instructions really relate to how your project proposal can support and fit really within within our program, within the National Estuary Program. So how does it support the Clean Water Act? Well, our program is part of the Clean Water Act, as I mentioned earlier. That's how we were established, and is a cornerstone, of course, of the work we do here in terms of our water quality program. And then how does this project support EPA's Powering the Great American Comeback Initiative? Many of you may have heard the 5 pillars mentioned, the EPA's 5 pillars. You'll see a link to those here. This is nothing that really was official. This is not any kind of an order that was provided or produced by the new administrator, Lee Zeldin of EPA, but it was released, and the link to that release is there. So you can check out those pillars and try to see how perhaps your proposal might fit with one of those. And then, of course, the action plans. What action plan does the project help to fulfill? And we'd ask that you select up to 3 of those. It might be 1, it might be 3, but we'd ask you to select the 3 that are the most pertinent there. And then, of course, we'd like to know how much money you're seeking. So the BitNet funding requests, those are only the funds that you're requesting from BitNet. There's other probable contributions. Many of you we know that are proposing projects are not seeking funding only, or have funding only from BitNet, but perhaps will be leveraging other funds or adding other dollars to the project. And obviously we're interested in knowing about that. I did already get a question actually a while back about the necessity for having funds leveraged, or additional funds, or match funds, or whatever you might call them. That's not required as part of our proposals. But it is something that the action plan team will look at, and can at times make a proposal perhaps more attractive than others if it's bringing more dollars to the table and leveraging dollars. But it is not required. I'll say that again. It is not something that's required. Of course, a budget. We want to see a budget, and we want to see it in a couple of ways. Budget by category table. And you see the categories listed here. These are sort of the typical federal categories that are used in building budgets. And then a budget by task. And so for projects that are collecting scientific data, just be aware that task 1 for any project like that will be the completion of a EPA approved quality assurance plan, or QAP, as we say there. So that is already listed there for you. But again, that's only for projects that are collecting data. And then there are other places here, of course, to list tasks. 2 other required tasks for any project are going to be quarterly monitoring reports, and then a final report as well, which you see listed here. So I will note that in the fillable form, it does not include the 2 budget tables that we asked you for, the budget summary tables, the budget by task and the budget by category. Those need to be developed by you all and submitted as an attachment along with the fillable form. So please note that. Again, those are not part of the fillable form. Those are things that need to be done in addition to the fillable form and submitted to us. That can be done in Excel, in a table in Word, or however you want to do it, Google Sheets, or anything like that. So, but just note, again, budget by task, budget by category, summary tables need to be provided to us separate, but attached to the fillable form. And then there's some milestone tables as well that you will see listed in the fillable form. Again, I think are pretty self-explanatory. So I guess it goes without saying, I didn't mention it earlier, but we are looking for projects that are within the estuary, and the boundaries of the estuary are east of the Mississippi, or west of the Mississippi River, and east generally of the Chaffalot River, or the Chaffalot Guide, if you will, on the east. So I'm going to leave it at that. I know it was pretty quick and pretty high level, but I think the instructions hopefully did a pretty good job of describing what we're looking for. And we're going to go ahead and open it up to questions. I'm going to stop presenting. And I see that there have already been some questions in the chat. So Looks like Michelle has answered those for my benefit, and if you'll bear with me, I'm going to read them now. If submitting IJA plan is the description of how project supports Clean Water Act applicable as well. But Michelle answered that as yes, I would agree with that. How the project supports Clean Water Act is required for both work plans. Well, all projects total the 500,000, so submissions should be small amounts. The amount that you submit, we can't tell you what the right number is, what the right amount is, but I did want to let you know again, kind of what the universal funding would be. And Michelle looks like she answered it there, in that 20 to 99,000 for the base grant or the 320 funds, and that 100,000 to 300,000 for the IJA funds. I think, again, just to give you an idea of kind of what the universe of possibilities are, we were fortunate last year to be able to sub-award probably more funds than we have in a few years past, and we awarded, was it 11, Michelle? I think 11 projects.
Yeah, Brian, it was 11 projects, around $1 million total.
Any other questions? Okay, I see one in the queue. How does reimbursement generally work? Yeah, so once a project is included, if it's selected to be included in their work plan and it's approved ultimately by EPA, the following step really is to get an agreement in place, whether that's a contract or sub-award agreement in place between our financial entity, which is Lumpcon/Board of Regents now, and us and the project implementer. And so typically, quarterly reports, for example, are required. That's something that would be part of your task, one of your tasks, and is reimbursable. So you would submit an invoice, a report to us, and an invoice for that, or an invoice for any other work and any of the other tasks that you might have as part of your project. That gets turned around to our financial sponsor, if you will, and then ultimately a check is cut to you for reimbursement. The timeline for that, I will admit, has been rather clunky over the last year and a half or so, and perhaps a little bit even before then. We're working to try to streamline that and make it as smooth as possible. Let's see. Heather Blanchard asks, is landscape architect planning an allowable project? I think the short answer to that is yes. But I would add that it's my experience, at least, that the action plan teams prefer to see not just planning, but planning and implementation. And so where there is some planning, of course, planning is needed to get any project off on the right foot. But where there's some implementation involved there, that's generally better received, I think, by the action plan teams. Let's see. I've got another question here from TJ Zenzal. What if the work is just outside of the BitNet region, but the critters would be moving into the estuary? That's a great question. There is, the lines have been a little bit fuzzy at times in terms of where we're funding projects. We're doing work on a project now that part of the work is in the estuary, part of it is in the greater New Orleans area. That technically is outside of the estuary. So I can't give you a yes or no. It's not a yes or no answer. It's not a sort of black and white type of question, but we have been known to stretch the boundaries of the estuary a bit. So I hope that helps. And I would add that if there are other staff members on here that would particularly like to jump in and answer a question, just raise your hand and we'll unmute you. Clay Ledette asked, I was asked to clarify if the batcher referred to in the example project idea references the Mississippi River batchew or the 10-acre site specifically located in Uptown. It is the Mississippi River batcher, as far as I know. I think that might have been an example that Michael threw out there, and I'm pretty sure he was referring to the Mississippi River batcher. Nicola Anthony. Can you ask your question a different way? I'm not sure I understand it. Two hands are raised from Andrew. We'll get to those. Thank you. See it. Thanks. Aaron Pierce asks, can or should study site maps be submitted separately from the project idea form? They can be. They don't necessarily have to be. We do ask for a location, a lat long. Michelle, correct me if I'm wrong, but that is part of it. I do not believe we asked for a map.
Yeah, that's correct, Bryn.
Okay. And Michael confirmed my statement earlier. Yes, Mississippi River Badger. So I see a couple of hands up as well. Let me open the queue here, and let's see. Nicola, can you unmute Nicola, Michelle?
Yes. Nicola, you should be able to unmute yourself now. Bill Erosh, can you try to unmute yourself?
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yep.
Yeah.
We got it.
Okay, sorry, I'm not terribly familiar with this platform. Yeah, sorry if my question wasn't very clear. I was just wondering, because there are some grant opportunities where there's a limit to the amount of F&A that can be put into the budget. I was just wondering if there was any limit or not. Indirect costs, in other words, sorry.
Yeah. Michelle, do you know that?
I do not. I don't know that it's come up. I'm gonna kick it over to Andrew.
Yeah. So yeah, I was gonna start talking.
Thank you.
So if you put in the amount of indirect that's appropriate for your organization, but just realize if you're putting in a huge amount of indirect, that's going to make you less competitive compared to other projects. When it comes down to we're gonna take your projects and we're going to divvy them up into the different action plan teams. And so when it gets to the action plan team level, they're going to be the ones ranking your projects relative to other projects. So if your project, that's going to be one of the things that we look at to see how much money is actually going towards implementing the project versus how much money is going towards administrative or indirect.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. Yeah, I can appreciate the answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Appreciate that. Okay, Bill, are you able to unmute yourself?
I think so. Can you hear me?
We got you.
Okay. This might be a silly question. I noticed in BETNEP's work plan for 26, we were lucky enough to get that grant for about almost $75,000 for Lake Buff and Lake Barrett aquatic vegetation investigation. It would appear that the same sort of phenomenon is occurring in Lake Fields in Lockport, and that lake was completely packed with vegetation until about a year ago. So I don't know if there's a common factor and whether that could be parlayed into the project that appears on pages 14 and 15 of the 26 work plan, or whether that would be more appropriately submitted in a separate request. But I mean, you have an absolute absence now of subsurface aquatic vegetation, which is really similar to what we've seen in Lake Buff and Lake Barrett. And I don't know, I'm just kind of looking for some direction, whether that would be appropriate for a request on this platform or whether that could be somehow connected to the other one, because it's in the same general area. I mean, it's right there in Lockport, not far from Raceland's Lake Buff.
Yeah, good question. I think I do think that it would be difficult to just fold it into an existing project. We've already got agreements worked out and obviously a scope associated with that project. That said, and so I guess the short answer, Bill, is that which should be another proposal.
Okay,
That said, there's no reason it couldn't be a sort of a phase two, if you will, or an add-on, I guess, separate proposal to the work that's already been done. There may be some leveraging that can be done between the proposal that was already approved and a new proposal that would be sort of similar.
sure. Okay, good. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. I saw some other questions. Let's see. Let me see where we are here. Stephanie Aubert, technical question about the fillable form. For a few of the questions where it lists a max of 3,000 characters, it appears that it allows closer to 2,500 characters. Would you prefer we stick to 2,500 characters or attach narratives, but still honor the 3,000 character max? Yeah, the intent was for it to include the 3,000. This is the first we're hearing that there was perhaps a glitch associated with that. On the fly, I would say that we would accept an attachment that 100 to 3,000 character limit, but we'll go back and check that and check the form as well and see if maybe there's something that we missed there. Michelle, thoughts on that?
I think that's the best thing to do. Yeah.
Okay. And our apologies for that. The intent again was to allow 3,000 characters. Adam Sanji, any restrictions on who can apply for funding? Are for-profit organizations allowed? Yes, anybody out there is eligible to apply for funding. Evelyn asked, the solicitation says that depending on which funding source is selected, the project must be completed within 2 to 4 years. Does that mean that the project must span 2 or 4 years, or can you be funded for less time? Yeah, certainly less time is okay. That's a great question and something we should clarify when we do this next year. But yeah, the intent is not to run up against the end date, of course, of the grant period for these things. And so shorter is no problem. Longer is a problem. So good question there. And a couple of thank yous. Oops, I raised my hand accidentally. I don't have a question. Okay, well, we're gonna let it simmer here for just a minute in case there's some other questions. It looks like maybe they slowed a bit, but if you had your question answered and you're ready to sign off, certainly feel free to. But Michelle and I will stick around for a little bit longer at least. I'll say another 5 minutes or so at least until and then give a last call for additional questions. But while y'all are mulling other questions that might be out there, again, I just want to take an opportunity to say thank y'all for your interest in this. As most of you probably are aware, we do a lot of work at BitNet. We don't all do the work at BitNet. We require partners like you all to have good project ideas and it helped us to implement our CCMP. So we appreciate your interest. We appreciate your willingness to help partner with us to get many of these things accomplished. All right, I see a couple of other comments or questions in the chat box. Let's see, it looks like all the boxes allow for 3,000 characters with the exception of the project goals and objectives, the objectives box, which is set to 1,500. So it appears that they work. If you're having some issues with it, again, if you stick to the character limits and want to attach something to send to us, I think that would be just fine. Ms. Gomez asks, can someone expand on fringe definition and indirect examples? Sure. So I'll do my best. This is not my wheelhouse. So Michelle or Andrew or anybody else jump in there if I mess any of this up. But indirect costs are things that just can't be directly costs or expenses are things that can't be directly tied to a function or a thing. So it's things like paying your electricity bill or paying your water bill or paying rent in your office, maintenance on vehicles. Those kind of things would be indirect costs that are not necessarily tied specifically to a project or a project, project task or a product within that project. How'd I do, Michelle?
Yeah, that's correct. And then fringe is all of the expenses associated with salary that aren't actually salary. So retirement benefits, health insurance, So you may or may not have that, but that's in addition to just someone's base salary.
Thanks for adding that. I forgot the fringe piece of the question. So thank you, Michelle. Okay. Next question. Milestone tables at the end of the grant are limited to 3 years. If we're planning a 4-year project for 4 years, should we add another one? Yes, that's my answer to that. Yes. And then Patrick says, thanks for the webinar. You're welcome, Patrick. Thank you. So again, we'll keep the lines open here for another few minutes, and then give a last call for questions. Again, keep in mind this is being recorded. You should be able to access this via our webpage. And so if you know of people that you think should have been interested in this or weren't able to attend for whatever reason and might like to see it, please feel free to share this with them. Andrew, I might even put you on the spot here. I know you've done this webinar for the last several years. We've changed it up a little bit, but are there some key points perhaps that I did not mention that you think we need to?
I think you covered pretty much everything. As far as like a 4-year project, I wasn't sure if we were going to go to 4 years with projects. Usually, even for the IJA projects, we usually limit those to 3 years, but maybe we have enough time in the grant to go to 4 years going forward. But as far as that goes, y'all can answer that. As far as from my perspective, so I'm the quality assurance manager at BitNep. If you have a scientific project that you're going to be submitting, I just want to remind everybody that your very first task in your list of tasks needs to be a QAPP. Okay, that's a quality assurance project plan, which has to be completely approved by EPA. Okay, that's your first task. And so you cannot do any scientific data collection. You can't do any work on your project without a fully approved QAPP. I think that as far as everything else goes, I think it's pretty good. I don't think I caught anything else that needs to be covered.
Hopefully there weren't any errors of omission. I would just say, I know we've harped on that QAPP thing a bit, and the reason we are is that if you require a QAPP with your project and work is done before that is approved, you will not get reimbursed for that work. And unfortunately, we've had that happen on an occasion or two, and we don't want that happening to our partners. And so forgive us for perhaps flogging a dead horse here, but that's why we're mentioning it so much. All right, I see Mr. Martin asked, can I get Mr. Bill Erosh's contact information? Sounds like he's working on a project in my organization's interest. I will reach out. Let's see, Mr. Martin, if you wouldn't mind sharing your contact information with me, I will share it with Mr. Erosh and let him know that you would like him to get in touch with you. You can email me at bren@btnep.org. I'll put it in the chat here. Yeah, so there's my email address. If you can just grab that, it's pretty simple, bren@btnep.org. Feel free to email me and I'll do what I can to get you guys in touch. You are welcome, Mr. Martin. Any other staff that is on board, I maybe open it up to you as well. If there's something you think I missed or we should have expressed here, please let me know, or feel free to unmute yourself and chime in. So we'll give it just another minute or two. see if anybody else has another question, and if not, we will sign off. All right, we do have another question. So is QAPP required for all projects, or did I get it wrong? No, it's not required for all projects. It's required for any project that's collecting data that would need to be basically QA/QC'd. It's a quality assurance feature of EPA's programs, if you will. So it's something that EPA requires us to do for ourselves and amongst our subawardees. Will there be any kind of a comment period on the proposed projects, or do they go straight to review and ranking by BitNet? Well, the action plan teams will review them, as we mentioned before, and then they'll be reviewed basically by BitNet, and we'll put together a draft work plan here in house. Anybody can serve on an action plan team, so in so much as you might want to comment on a project, you're more than welcome and are invited to be a part of an action plan team. Of course, if you are proposing a project, you would need to abstain from commenting or ranking that project as well. Like UAS or drone data. I'm not sure how to answer that, but if you could either be more specific in the chat, or we'd be happy to chat with you about it via phone as well. You can always email me. My email address was included in the chat just a minute ago, and be happy to talk with you about that. I think generally, well, here we go. Yeah, I was going to say, I think generally drone data would require QAPP. Yeah, if you're collecting as part of the project. Andrew has just answered that.
So just to clarify something, so for our base funds, for 320 funds, we do not require any matching funds from the project, from the PIs who are submitting the project proposals. And the same goes for the ILJA funds, correct? We do not require any matching funds. That's right. For any of the funds. So yeah, so any of the projects that you are submitting, we don't require any matching funds, but we do ask you if you have any other funds that you're contributing to the project. If this is part of a larger project and this is one component that you want to fund through BitNet, that we want you to mention that. We want you to put that in your application, because that's going to make your form, your project proposal much more competitive. Thank you.
And another question that Patrick is asking, will recording this webinar be shared afterwards? Yes, it will be. It'll be available on our website shortly after this is done. All right, seems like some ideas are percolating out there, so we're going to give it another couple of minutes, however painful that is to sit here in silence. But I want to make sure folks have an opportunity to talk with us directly and have their questions answered. So we'll give it just another couple minutes, and if we don't have any questions at the end of a minute or two, we'll have another last call. All right, Rob has got a question. Stepped in late, submitting project area maps, okay, but not required. Yes, You are welcome. And again, a recording of this will be made available, so you can access that. If you missed the first part of it or any part of it for that matter, you can go back and review that. All right. Well, any more questions? Okay, not seeing a hand raised. I'm not seeing any more questions in the chat box. So again, I'll just thank everybody for participating with us today. We couldn't do what we do here at BitNet without all of you. So we thank you for that. Thank you for your interest in the solicitation, and wish everybody luck. And with that, I think we will sign off. So thank y'all, and have a nice afternoon and evening.